Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Deepen in the Divine video blog series, which you can find on YouTube under Scott Kreitza, K-R-Y-T-S-A, or on my author site, krytsa.com. And I literally just got done doing a reading for somebody, and I rarely do this when I'm doing readings, but I happened to be called to pull out oracle cards or tarot deck, whatever you would like to call them. And the way that I do them, I think, is a little bit different than what I've seen most people do. Most people will just pull from one deck and do a reading or get information off of that. But what I like to do, I think, is, again, I haven't seen anybody do this, and it started when I actually worked briefly as a professional intuitive or psychic when I used to live in the Bay Area. This is back in 2007, I think, 2008. It was a bookstore that's now closed in the Bay Area. Unfortunately, a lot of them are closed in the Bay Area, metaphysical bookstores. But I spent some time there, and in one of the readings that I did, I was using oracle cards at the time. I was just called to actually pull a card that represented the lower self, or what I call the more practical self aspect, but then also pull a card for the higher self aspect, and that's kind of more like your spiritual self or guidance. I like to call in Holy Spirit, or maybe an ascended master, or whatever works for the person I'm working with. For me, it's Holy Spirit. And then for the lower self, it would be, guidance from literally like spirit guides or angels or things like that, because I do feel like their messages can be a little bit filtered. But what I discovered is I really like this method, and it's a great way for you to not only practice for yourself. You can do this method, but I don't necessarily use the little booklets that come with the oracle decks or even tarot cards. I like to this is a great way to practice intuition and just kind of pull in what you're feeling about the cards, or maybe there's certain images within the cards that actually speak to you in that present time. Because I might pull, for example, I'll show you the two decks that we're going to use today. So for the lower self aspect, I'm going to use the Osho Zen Tarot deck. I really love these cards just because it has a really good spread of really positive things that could potentially happen, but also addressing some of the maybe darker or more negative things that you could be dealing with, which is why I love to use this deck for, again, like the lower self, the more practical aspect of what you might be going through. And then for the higher self aspect for today, I'm going to use the Ascended Master deck, Adoring Virtue deck. I think she's going to pull these down now that she's kind of transitioned in her spiritual life, getting back to more of like a traditional Christian background, which I fully support. I think is great for her. In fact, this is a rosary. I love to hold on to rosaries, especially this particular one for me. When I'm doing readings, I love the energy and the connection, and it works for me. But that's just for me, so I'm actually going to set that down for the video. And so what I wanted to work on today was just show you how I would do, and I'm just going to pull for one situation or one question. And it could be something as simple as this. So I could come in and say, okay, guides and Holy Spirit, what is it that you would like me to be aware of or open to for just today? Kind of setting a time limit. And then I would grab, in this case, I'm grabbing the Osho Zen Tarot deck. I like to start with the lower self aspect, kind of put my energy into the cards. I usually don't do a lot of clearing. Maybe if I'm called to, if there was just kind of left a reading and didn't feel that great about it. In the case I handled these cards in the last reading, because I just did it over Skype, so I feel pretty good about them. So just kind of go through and shuffle them, and I just sort of get to a point. I don't really do a whole lot of shuffling. I can just feel or tell what card I should pull. So in this case, I shuffled until I pulled the top card, but sometimes it might be the middle, the bottom, whatever. So that's the lower self card. And now for the Ascended Master deck for the higher self. And again, I'm calling in the Holy Spirit for this aspect of it. And there it is. And so then what I like to do is I'll pull both cards at the same time and then start to look at what the message might mean to me. So in this case, the burden comes up. Again, for some people, they might be thinking, oh gosh, negative card. Why would you have these cards at your disposal? But I love it because we do need to know some of the less prettier sides to what's going on in our life. And for me, this card makes a lot of sense because I feel like I am carrying actually a couple burdens at the same time, one lesser than the other. For me, what I'm going through in my life is a major issue would be health related. You probably can't tell by looking at me, but starting about a year ago, some stuff has come up and I've had to really deal with it, which has been actually positive for me because it's forced me to change my diet, really focus on being healthy in my body, but I have to really work at it to stay healthy and for things to not come back again. And then for me also the smaller burden, I guess, is just this, I'm always going back and forth as far as, focusing on a creative life versus, having the day job. And it still feels like a burden for me, even though I've really worked at seeing the positive benefits of having a day job so that I can do creative work, but it still feels burdensome at times. And especially after a week I worked a lot of hours. My body got beat up a little bit and, it's kind of feeling like a little bit of a burden to have to do the day job thing while I'm trying to do other creative things on the side. So this card really makes sense. It's basically saying, hey, pay attention to this. This is something that don't just sort of walk through the day and just sort of go through it unconsciously. It's, really think about what's going on here. And then what's interesting is the higher self card is the balance, career, and home life. Again, makes total sense to me. It's like, okay, if I might be getting this at like a subconscious level or a little bit consciously, but when I pull cards like these and it's like in your face, directly in my face, yeah, I really need to focus on this. I really need to pay attention to this. I've learned this, but I need to keep practicing it in my life, which is I can't let my day job, hurt my health or my mental health. And so it's once again a reminder to recommit to that. So for me, this little reading that I did is very helpful, and it's something that I'm going to be focusing on now through the rest of today and also the weekend, since this is a Friday. So this is an example of how I like to use oracle cards. And you can, of course, choose whatever deck or decks that speak to you, but just separating it out between lower self, practical lower self, body-based self, and then the higher self, the spiritual self. I find it's a really helpful way to do oracle card readings, not only for myself, but for other people. And then sometimes what I like to do is, as I'm pulling cards, again, I usually like to do things so it's, what's going on near term, today, the week, then pull another deck. It might be for the next few months or 6 months, end of the year, and then a year out. That's a great way to spread decks. Or again, you could pull up the booklets and pull out different readings. There's like 5 card spreads, 7 card spreads. But what I would do is do one, again, for the lower self, and then repeat the same spread for the higher self. And you'll start to see a lot of amazing parallels and things that you can compare to. And again, one of the things that I'll do is not necessarily use the booklet, but use the images, or sometimes I'm just called to use the words in the card. Like this one, the image didn't speak to me at all. It was the words, the balance, career, and home life, or health life as well. In the case of the burden card, all of it made sense to me, and I was able to understand the different layers or elements in here. And so I would really encourage you to start to develop your own intuitive ability, and cards are a great way to do that. And if you have any questions about this method, or maybe you just want to share some insight that you had around trying this, you could either comment below the video, or you could send me an email. My email is storyteller@krytsa, KRYTSA.com. I hope you really enjoyed this, and I hope you have fun playing around. And again, intentionally bring in what you want to your session. I like to set protection and really be conscious of who or what I bring in whenever I do these readings. That's why I love to work with Holy Spirit. To me, that's, the voice of God. And so I'm very intentional with that. So I just wanted to end with that. Wish you all a great day or evening or morning. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.